Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion, episode 80. It's been a few months since the last episode. Apologies for the delay if you are indeed a follower here. Some months I am able to knock a bunch of these out, and then others I just can't. But I plan to continue to release these as long as I have things to talk about and there are people who want to talk about them, so let's move on. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing and liking where you're listening to podcasts. And if you feel like you have something to say, throw a review up. That stuff goes a long way in this world. I'm on social media on Facebook and Instagram. Just look up Talk About the Passion podcast and you should find me there. Want to be on an episode or want to suggest a guest or a subject, please contact me there. My guest today is Eddie Sutton, who is best known for being the vocalist for the New York hardcore band Leeway. Leeway have been one of my favorite bands for a long time, so it was an honor to talk to someone whose music has been a part of my life for a good chunk of it. I'd like to thank our mutual friend, Mary Breisky, who put us together to talk, and I hope I didn't butcher your last name. If you are a fan of Leeway, you probably have heard Eddie came down on some hard times and was diagnosed with cancer last year. He gives an update on that here in the discussion, and there's also a GoFundMe to help with some of the costs that come with something serious like this. The website for that is gofundme.com, Eddie Leeway's Fight with Cancer. If you Google that together, it will bring you right there. Again, it's gofundme.com, Eddie Leeway's Fight with Cancer. As it is with all of these, any amount helps. And, sadly, as we grow older, we start to see friends, family members, or, people whose art had an impact on us go through hard times. Eddie seems to have his head held high through hard times and still wants to create as long as he can, as he discusses in this conversation. I have a much longer introduction for the next couple of episodes, which were much shorter conversations, and since this is a long one, I'll stop here and get into this conversation. So let's go with episode 80, Take What Is Bold with Eddie Sutton. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. I originally planned on working with Skeeter, but then the pandemic started, and then I was diagnosed in February with cancer. Took them a while to figure out exactly what I had, which is squamous carcinoma.
Right.
It's a type of cancer that spreads.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I only have the mass in my right lung, and all lesions that were in my brain have been removed through what's called gamma knife. It's radiation therapy. Through MRIs, they pinpoint where the lesion or lesions are, and they zap it directly. Like I had 11 originally, and I took the treatment, and they all disappeared. This last time, I only had one, and we already did the gamma knife, so I'm hoping nothing will pop back after this one.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah, the mass is shrinking. I've been on chemo since I guess around late April. I'm hoping to get off it soon enough and just go through the immunotherapy infusions. But we'll see. We're getting close.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've always said it's treatable, so I've always stayed focused.
Yeah.
It certain moments were kind of hard for me, but it's okay. it's definitely okay. So I'm not afraid. I keep a good head about it.
Yeah, you seem from what I just see from the outside, the little I see you on like social media and that kind of thing. You seem to
Well, I
have
kind of
your head
shut
up.
down from that.
Yeah,
I shut down from that for the summer. I took the time off. You know, energy can be an issue at times. Uh, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I'm actually at the studio I work out of for the next few days because we're trying some pre-production and working on a recorded song. Uh, at this point, I figure it's good to just release singles.
yeah,
It's kind of easier to do. I mean, I've had 7 songs, submitted to me, and I intend to do more. But one at a time is a good pace
yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
this point. It's a different industry too now.
I know,
You
right?
could cut a single and do a bit of a video for it, and see where it takes you.
I know it's the days of people wanting to hear. Well, people I guess want to hear full records, but the days of that
Hey,
is kind of far beyond.
if I could get the budgets I was getting back in the day,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, that would equate into today's money.
yeah. I know,
You
right?
know, I would definitely be all for that, but this is the best way to do it financially and with my current time, so at least I'm blessed to still be able to be doing it
Yeah,
at this age.
and it's good, man. The single you put out, the "I'm Your Pusher" message to a man child is it's great stuff, man. The lyrics are really cool,
Well,
and
I appreciate it. I didn't
yeah,
intend to write 2 songs that had uh, either the topic of drugs or mental health,
right,
as well as like with Message in a Man Child. That's me reaching out to an old friend who committed a hit and run death of somebody in the Carolinas and came up north. And I already told him I was in a different place in my life, and I wasn't really interested in going back to the past with some people. You know what I mean? Because I had some very dark experiences with this guy
yeah. You
that
want
I
to
don't want to go back to. You know what I mean? I'm not the addict I was 30 years ago.
exactly. You're a different
You know
guy
what I
now.
mean?
Yeah,
And we grew up together, the whole 9 yards.
yeah,
And what he wound up doing was involving people that were close to me and their children to hide out. And that was my way of basically giving him his hardcore fame that I guess he always wanted.
yeah, yeah,
Because he kind of surfaced after being out of it for so long on Facebook, and I wasn't even on Facebook much anymore. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I wasn't answering messages, I wasn't reading comments, but I answered the email when it came to me the way I thought was best. And there's a lot of old timers because their glory days are over, you know, um, and they want to reclaim their position. You know what I mean? And we're talking about generations that have passed in hardcore. Nobody knows or gives a fuck about somebody from the past that's not relevant.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right.
You know, let alone the 12 bands you were in that you got kicked out of all of them.
Everything I know, right?
You know what I mean? So it's like, and plus you're a middle-aged man in your late 40s, like trying to get tough with kids.
Yeah, that's too bad, man. And it's true. Those scummy people sort of rise back up and try to get back into your life, and you don't have time for that. But I think you handled that well. Like the song is it's definitely I was sort of wondering what it was about, but you could kind of feel what was going on through the lyrics.
Yeah, well, I've always been lucky to be able to emote uh, the story I'm trying to tell,
Yeah,
and that's how I kind of uh, you know confront my music is with a story based thing. That way it's tangible, and I always have a passion and emotion for it, you know, when I get the chance to perform it and what have you. You know, uh, there's a lot of guys, after a discography of 4 albums, won't play songs from their first record and will just play the newest stuff. You know what I mean? For me, it's a little different because they are stories, and you know, uh, it's interesting at the same time. But just because I write these stories doesn't mean you know me.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, it's nice to sort of still keep a little mystery. You don't want to
Yeah,
put everything out there on the table.
yeah. It's crazy. Like over the last 10 years, we're finally getting documentaries on music scenes that we grew up being a part of. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, you're from Boston
yeah,
originally.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so you know about the straight edge scene that
Oh
kind of
yeah,
dominated up there.
yeah,
But then there's LA, there's DC, you know what I mean? A lot of great Midwest bands, stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of these people are getting blessed with some sort of documentation film, that recognizes what you did as a history. And, it's a beautiful thing to know that you were part of that. You know, it kind of makes you feel like you did something with your life, even though, you might not have done anything else in the regular world and lived a long, normal life or
right.
a crazy life.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
And this stuff's not going to get covered by Rolling Stone or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but it's if walking down the street and you see Eddie Sutton from Leeway is going to be just as important to me in music in my history as Robert Plant would to be to someone else, and
Well,
it's
it is the
it's
modern day classic rock for sure.
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
You know what I mean? But yes, it was easier for bands to put records out. It's not like you had one record in front of you of a particular genre and you bought it. Not dissing those bands because they're great bands from the 70s and stuff, but it was much harder for you to get a release than it was later on for so many of these bands. You may not have had good production or not, but you still got something pressed and pushed out there. And surprisingly, a lot of these records have eclipsed six figures over
I
the
know
decades.
it's crazy,
You
right?
know, yeah, I'm hoping at some point Leeway could get the rights back for the first two records.
Yeah,
It's something we're pursuing as a group, even though, we all don't necessarily socialize
right.
anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the main three, which is me, AJ, and Mikey, have signed on to try to pursue this. It's going to take at least 3 years. It's not something that happens right away.
Yeah, it's fucked, man.
But
Profile Records is screwed.
well, it's a label. Profile at least gave us a budget to go and record two records that are, considered timeless for this music. And that's a beautiful thing to have been a part of.
Oh yeah,
So they gave us the outlet and they gave us the resources to do it.
yeah,
Whatever they did afterwards is a record label being a record label.
yeah, yeah.
At this point, I understand it a little bit better. The same thing with Chris Williamson. As much as, he managed the money and there was never accounting, he got us on the Quickness tour. We went to California and back. He went out of pocket to help facilitate that tour too. So, he was looking for bigger and grander things, just like, the record labels were hoping. It was kind of like al dente pasta. They took all the bands and
Yeah,
basically threw a noodle on the wall, and if it stuck, they
yeah.
worked with it.
That was the one. Yeah, I know.
If not, you got to wait for it to cook a little longer.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
so you came up in the New York in the hard. How early were you going to hardcore shows and punk?
I first started going to shows in '81,
Okay, so you
and
saw everyone pretty much.
yeah, and then by '82, I was definitely breaking night and going to shows and staying out all night at
Yeah,
17.
yeah.
You know,
And do you remember the very first show that you saw?
It was kind of forget most of the bands, but it was 2+2 show
Mm-hmm.
off of Houston and Second Street. It was like a replacement, I think, for 2+2 or some shit. Crowd played, and a lot of the people that were tangible and part of that scene were there too. I really can't remember
Yeah, yeah,
many of the bands other than Cause for Alarm, I think.
yeah, yeah. Kraut was the
You
first
know,
band I saw actually up in Boston in '84. Kraut and
okay.
Channel 3 was my
Yeah,
first.
Crowd and Channel 3 were very tight together.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I lived with Doug from Crowd from
Oh,
like
okay.
85 till 87. You know what I mean? So, and I was at all those Channel 3 CB shows when they came into town. I watched their transition because by then, by 87, I was flying out to California uh, to date somebody at the time. And the lady friends that I met through Doug, the famous Bear sisters, they would take me to the Hollywood bars and, also socialize with guys like that. You know what I mean? Like from that whole punk period that turned into hardcore, because a lot of them were punk bands. You know, take TSOL for example, another band that kind of went the glam route.
Yeah, yeah. Later on.
I never really met Jack Grisham, but I met some of the other guys. But the Kraut guys, when they went to California, they met Grisham and all these people. Plus, at that time, Steve Jones would come up and do songs with them. You know, Steve Jones and Doug were very tight for a long period of time. You know, in those early '80s.
Yeah. Before hardcore, though, because you're obviously your singing voice is definitely influenced from stuff beyond punk and hardcore, especially at that time, because people were mostly screaming and yelling. So
No,
before,
still the same. It's still the same, but that's what they expect from it. You know, for me, in the beginning, I don't know if I was gonna go there, but the more I did it, the more I was finding my individuality, and that's what I always thought of as hardcore. Even if I dressed up like a b-boy,
yeah,
circa 1983,
yeah,
or I had boots, a high cuff jeans and a band shirt on and short hair. It was supposed to be about individuality. So on like the mindset of an MC level, I was trying to have my own style,
yeah, yeah,
you know, and like I'm one of the few guys that actually multi-tracked vocals to try to harmonize and do things like that on
yeah,
songs.
yeah,
I really took to the recording seriously and tried to even, orchestrate my voice, if you will, to help with a song. But the singing comes from the '70s too, growing up and trying to sing to all those songs, and then all the hard rock bands too, not just R&B. Um, so I guess I got that from my mom. I was able to carry a tune on some stuff, but when I started doing vocals and building up to having uh, a voice, uh, you know, it took a little time. Yeah, I was also born partially deaf, so
all right,
sometimes my notes aren't as perfect as they can be. I definitely need an engineer that could understand pitch to help me at times. But because I was given recording budgets for my first two records to work with real engineers in a seriously expensive studio for what it was at the time, it was analog. It wasn't this, Pro Tools thing that simplified everything. uh, I think I learned a lot from being in the moment. I'm not a technical guy. I don't record with an instrument.
right,
Um, but I've learned to use my voice as an instrument doing what I do. And yes, I made sure I had my own style, you know, something that, would be difficult to repeat. even if you do have the talent, you know, I'm not going to, start ragging on people, but there's vocalists in hardcore that have been going to vocal coaches for fucking 30 plus years,
Yeah.
and they still aren't putting a melody,
Right.
and they're just riding on the hooks from their first records
Right.
instead of trying to do anything new.
Yeah. I know.
And for me, I don't think that's really being true to it. All right, it'll bring kids in the doors. You could play them to play same set year after year after year, but they deserve something new. Why don't you put your balls on the table and take the challenge also?
Yeah, I know, right? Challenge the
You know,
audience.
you should be able to write either the same stuff that you wrote back in the day.
Yeah.
It's because every band had a formula for that thing. Or you could try to be expansive and do something fresh and new and try to blow some heads off. Have a great hook, have a great melody. You know what I mean? And bring it.
Yeah. I mean, Leeway had a hip hop influence, but it wasn't like an obvious influence. It was like a swagger and like a swing to the music. It wasn't like
we called
blatant,
it a groove.
Yeah,
we called it a groove, but I also got the wig tag and stuff like that.
Right.
And I guess it's normal.
Yeah.
But I wasn't trying to do hip hop. I wasn't trying to be on your MTV raps. I was in an underground band that was trying to help build the sound of this music scene, because musicianship became much more serious as we came onto the scene. You know what I mean? We progressed very quickly from 84, barely knowing our instruments, to recording Born to Expire 3 years later and having a record deal with all the right musicians around us to kill on this record and have hardcore as an attitude, because Leeway was very much also a metal band in its sound, but hardcore was a passion and energy. It didn't necessarily mean you had to look like the Circle Jerks character,
right,
or be like a surf rat like JFA, or dread out like the Bad Brains.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Their own thing, and that's when bands stuck out, when when they were doing their own.
And we weren't the only band that was looking into metal to improve our sound,
right?
As well as another challenge to build on our musicianship. It was just a natural progression, simply because a lot of metal was pretty hard.
Yeah.
Aside from like some of the silly images that were out there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what was cool, because we had sort of like the more. It was nice to have people I could relate to a little more.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly, and and people were doing what they wanted to do, and what's better than that?
Yeah.
What's better than that?
Yeah. When you first get that record in your hand, Born to Expire, how did that make you feel?
Very tripped out.
Yeah.
It finally happened. At the time, it broke records for most sales in a week at Bleecker Bob's. Things like that. We were hitting milestones. But it was trippy. I grew up as an insecure kid with self-esteem issues, but I put on a good face, and I went off and did my thing live. But at the same time, like I couldn't believe that there was a opportunity and chance for any relative recognition, if you want to call that success, in the music business. And during that time, I was introduced into heroin, but I didn't start fucking with opiates and getting caught up until after 89.
Okay. In 89, you did the long tour, right, with the Bad Brains?
Yeah, it all happened after I came back.
Yeah.
there was, I guess, disillusion and frustration as to, like, how come we're not on 120 minutes? How come, Profile didn't really know how to distribute and promote us. And by the time Born to Expire was released, Chris Williamson's Rock Hotel contract expired with Profile, and they never picked it up again. So, there was already these conflicts on the business side of things that really weren't getting done. And, I guess personally, because I did have faith in my talents and everything else, I was seeing other bands getting attention on MTV, and then I was just wondering, like, why can't we? Why can't these other bands that are around us get the same love? You know what I mean? Because a lot of us are capable of doing it. But by also 89, I believe there wasn't so much of as a real scene. The unified groups, broke off
Yeah, it was
into
breaking up a little that
cliques
year.
and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And there wasn't the supporting of each other as
Right.
once used to be.
Yeah. But that must have been cool though for you to tour with a band like the Bad Brains, who I imagine you know.
I've played over 100 shows with them. Of course, the majority of them with HR.
Right.
But I did shows with Chuck Mosley.
Yeah.
I think at least one, if not two, European tours with Israel. You know what I mean? So Leeway played well over 100 shows with the Bad Brains. They were like uncles to us. They really looked out for us in a lot of ways. And learned so much with them. There was a break between the grueling 12 weeks we did nationally with them, and my guys went home for a week. I stayed on tour. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I was blessed and invited onto the Bad Brains tour, and in their bus, and got to travel with them, and learned a lot from, like, Daryl and Doc. Earl, I would see even more when we did Europe, because he spent a lot of time settled in Europe as well. One time, Earl came to us and said he wanted to manage us, but nothing ever really transpired of it. And this is more towards, the Auto Crash release and Open Mouth Kiss
later on
at this point. But,
yeah.
The relationship and working together went throughout, that 89 tour. Even before then, we did shows with the Bad Brains as early as 86 and 87. So when Europe came, like, we were still with them in 93, 94.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And so you were saying, so watching other bands, make it onto MTV and that kind of thing, was that giving you personally, like, anger and sort of resentment towards other bands?
Well, it wasn't bands from New York.
Right.
I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, like, independent bands from wherever.
Yeah.
Now, like, if any other band in New York got to break through, it would only be good for the rest of us.
Yeah, of course. That's usually how that works,
Like, New York hardcore, it didn't become the next grunge.
Yeah.
And, I guess New York hardcore as a whole would never go into a true alternative level thing, because it's a little too real. It's a little too grimy.
And it's maintained the longest. I mean, hardcore is obviously still alive and well everywhere, but I think New York hardcore has sort of stood the tallest throughout through the years.
I think a lot of bands can definitely learn from bands in New York.
Yeah.
And not just what to do, but what not to do.
Yeah. yeah, of course.
And there's some great bands out there, like Turnstile. They're not trying to churn out the same thing. They're expansive, and I've gotten to meet the guys, I think they're a great band as an example of something from within the past 10 years. Back that, after, a decade after, before that would be Agents of Man.
Oh, okay.
Again, a lot of great musicians from that band that I got to work with when I did a project called Truth and Rights. We cut a single and a full-length CD, which we plan to reissue because not many copies were ever, sold or distributed. So we're thinking of reissuing that because it's a very solid, 10-song release.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff was that you guys were doing?
We either like beat down hardcore type riffs, as well as other melodic stuff, but well recorded.
Nice.
And I was very proud of the record. It just never got really distributed properly. In fact, one of the guys that I did that music with, he's submitted songs to me. You know what I mean? And one of the songs, talking about Ray Fonseca, the first song is actually one of his that I'm trying to tackle right now, like while I'm up here.
Now, when you say submitting songs, is this people give you music and then you'll write lyrics around it? Is that how?
As of right now, it's guys I've worked with before,
right?
And one newer person, who had riffs, and we're looking for somebody to collaborate with. And because I've worked with Dan Nastasi and Ray before, I'm definitely open to see what they have, and they've brought me some riffs, and they're doing small recordings on it, so I could lay some vocals on it, and just go through the process and try to cut some singles for the new year.
Yeah, nice.
I'm in a comfortable position for that. Obviously, I call Leeway NYC now, since I'm the only guy left.
Right.
And, I play with musicians that I'm close to. And, it is what it is. It's a tribute band. I'm not trying to bullshit on it, but I don't want people assuming it's the original band and being disappointed either.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if I call it Leeway NYC, you know what it is.
Exactly.
With the pandemic and everything, it's not like much has happened.
Right, yeah.
I'm hoping that we all can start doing more stuff again.
I know, right?
My health is the issue, but I could definitely control the environment of recording and cut some singles and still try to do something with the time I may have left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to be practical about that.
And you're good singing?
Yeah, I mean, I could still do stuff. I'm not worried about that. And like I said, with recording, you could kind of control the environment much easier than you could trying to go off live, because there's the running around and trying to vocalize. I've been offered shows for the end of the year, but I want to make sure that I'm capable of still being 100% in that, in that element.
Yeah.
I don't want to look weak up there, so I want to make sure. So, recording is the right thing to do, because obviously you don't want to really try to do shows without something to promote. So,
right.
I'm dying to make it happen. I'm dying to make it happen.
Yeah. And you've always been
not literally, figurative.
Yeah, of course. With Leeway too. So those first two records were classics, and then the second two, I love them. I think fans love both of them, but those never hit as well. It seems they didn't. Why do you think that is? Just promotion, or?
I don't know. Well, obviously we don't have the rights to it.
Yeah.
Sony has the rights to this shit. They're just holding on to it like some fucking mogul hoards property for value. You know what I mean? That's what I think of, like publishing and rights. It's like legal. It's like musical real estate. So they found out AJ did a deal with this bootlegger out of Belgium, and they were on Spotify and everything else. But then Sony found out and shut it all down. So, now nobody could hear this shit the way it should be properly streamed. Or maybe it just came back recently, I heard, and Sony's finally trying to make $1 with it.
Right.
We can only hope, like, within 3 years and our personal longevity, that we get to see the rights back in our hands.
Yeah.
And then, do this again properly.
Yeah.
But, anybody that tells you from the 80s that they knew they were going to be where they are today with whatever success or
Right.
cult following they have is full of shit.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, we were just cutting records. Did we think that they would withstand the test of time 40 years later, like the music we grew up and idolized? Like whether it's even though those bands sold more records and toured and played bigger places, at least for our level, this is success for underground.
Oh yeah.
The fact that you could have a song that's been around for 30 plus years and you could actually go out and do a show and have kids younger than your song show up, that shows that you have some relevance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that people, who come into hardcore now at a younger age and get to rage with younger bands and appreciate the older bands, you know what I mean, is a beautiful thing. It's not something for everybody, but a lot of people get to learn about themselves and life through the music, the lyrics that are thought-provoking or stories that you can learn from, that you're not hearing from fucking pop right now. I mean, I was always into top 40 until like the millennium. You know what I mean? Like there was always something out there, but by around 95, something went wrong.
Yeah.
And I just lost interest in pretty much everything that was coming out.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have something for me to grab onto. So, I guess it's just being an old fogey. I resort back to older stuff.
It is nice to see younger people getting into stuff now. Like you were saying, like when Leeway would play, like there's a video of you guys playing. I think it's from This Is Hardcore in maybe 2016 or 2017, and it's
about
just,
that.
Yeah, it's great. Just seeing all the young people, like, this is now important to them. A whole new generation of young kids, getting to see that for the first time is
well, it's kind of like you need an education in hardcore, like, and because it's been going on for so long, a lot of the young kids, that go straight to like the youth, the straight edge type sounding bands, the ones of today, and listen to the stuff in the back where it came from originally, and that's the cool thing about it. There is this older history. When I was growing up, if a band was 30 years old, you were listening to them on the oldies station because it was fucking doo-wop.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ironically, we're in that position, but in a more modern day. Obviously, Leeway wasn't a doo-wop band, so you're not, But, it's the distance between then, if you can compare to where music was, 30 years as I was starting Leeway versus, today and 30 years back, it's hard to comprehend that it's very much similar, even though sounds have grown and branched out.
Right. Yeah, different
so much.
sounds.
Yeah, I guess like, I kind of relate to being an underground classic rock, singer.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I think of these things and, I kind of got to chuckle at it.
Yeah.
I really do. Be like, if I was 30 years, my music was 30 years old when I when I was a kid, I wouldn't be really listening to it because
Yeah.
I'm not interested in Dion and the Belmonts.
I know,
Wrote
right?
great songs,
Right. Yeah.
but I'm not going to go rock out to that. That's not going to make me flip out in my bedroom.
Right.
I want to sing to the mirror.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And hardcore just has a whole other rage and energy
Yeah.
that helps a lot of kids with their frustrations in life. And it gives you something to do, because this original scene that I started going to shows to was based through people that were misfits and outcasts. You know what I mean? There wasn't really a place for them in society. And a lot of these individuals were very scary. Like you would look at them and you'd wonder why they're not in jail or prison.
Right.
Not that they did something. I'm
Right.
just
Right.
saying,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. That
you know,
vibe. Yeah.
that whole, the first time you go to a show, because you've heard all these stories and you're a kid, it's wild, it's exciting, man.
Yeah.
It could intimidate you at times.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Yeah. Yeah. You never knew it was going to happen. Something
And
terrible could happen. All of
you couldn't help wanting to get close to that fire, not just the energy. And the bands were providing this soundtrack to a lot of the energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
was addictive.
Everybody would go outside between bands. Drama and beef could pop off during that time. Then you go back inside and you got some guys who want to be Lord of the Dance, and a lot of other people are watching it, singing along, and getting too close to that fire, sometimes getting burned, and it was a very frenzied energy that, you couldn't get going to like the fucking Nassau Coliseum to go see Metallica.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to,
even though you had a mosh pit and everything like that,
it's not the same.
I would love to see them, have to endure some of the original dances.
Yeah, like
in New York
AF
that went to A7 shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a different, it's a cliche. It had to be there, but it really is. I think when you a lifer in hardcore, you recognize stuff like that, the danger and just how different it is than the mainstream world of music.
Yeah, you have crews nowadays, but a lot of the crews that were wild, grown up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But, the element's still there. Things can happen. People that are racist and Nazis are generally not invited to a lot of these shows.
Yeah.
Because they'll get swarmed. It just goes to show you that, there is a belief system. It's not no holds barred.
Right.
There were a lot of rules in the beginning. Like you couldn't stage dive feet first with boots.
Right.
You'd get in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now you see people running over people's heads.
Don't talk shit unless you're ready to take a smack. You know what I mean? For talking shit. There was a lot of different things that you had to learn in order to not be that guy who got his ass handed to him. And, I've seen a lot of people come and go because, they did something wrong and it was extremely humiliating. And they never tried to get their rep back or anything like that. They just put their tail between their legs and gave up.
Yeah. Did you know when you toured around Europe? What was the scene like in different cities and countries? It must have been completely different.
Some countries don't dance.
Yeah.
They tend to just watch you. At least that's my experience for my band. But that's okay. You're supposed to perform. You know what I mean? I go with the energy of the room. Like if I'm playing to a small crowd, I'm still going to give them the best energy I have at that moment of the day and tell my stories and do my songs. But I'm not going to act like I'm playing to a packed theater. You know what I mean? Because that's just not what it is. You know, some bands, they've been doing it so long, I've taken gaps and breaks between it. So, you know, I'm always rebuilding a following because I dip out and come back and all that shit. Um, in the early 90s, the whole scene came out to see anybody from America, especially New York bands. So, um, so it didn't necessarily mean that you were a great band in the beginning, but a lot of bands stayed the course and established a following, no matter how talented they were. You know what I mean? Um, but it's changed a lot since then. Today they're more selective. Some countries dance more than others. I enjoyed the last tour I did, which was in the beginning of the summer, because it wasn't, the usual dates that I was having in a lot of countries. I broke into Poland for the first
Oh,
time and did
nice.
3 wonderful shows out there. Uh, I went up towards Russia, but in one of the states that is no longer a part of Russia. I
Oh,
can't
wow.
remember what it is
Yeah.
offhand. Uh, but like Latvia, maybe Latvia. I feel bad, but I can't remember. But then I got to Hungary for the first time, played Budapest, and hitting those areas and seeing the energy, the vibe, the people that came out was a beautiful blessing. I'm very humbled by all of this, that I could be somebody in my mid 50s and that I can still draw an audience, even though I haven't done much of anything, compared to other bands putting releases and having a label and management behind them and
Right.
everything else.
But it's
You know what I mean?
But Leeway is definitely one of the more. You're very humble, but definitely, I'll tell you, one of the more important, just big bands in this hardcore. In the hardcore metal scene, and people are going to respect that for as long as.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to be a part of that. I couldn't do it myself. We
Yeah.
were a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. Of course.
But we may have differences now and things like that. And I'm only tight with, you know, maybe one guy that I still do a show once in a while with, which is Michael Gibbons. He is my top supporter out of all the guys from those first 2 records. But, despite not having relationships really with the others, I can't forget where we came from.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of us pushed each other to do something that can be aspiring 30 years later. Like that's a wonderful thing. Like next year will be the 30th anniversary of the Kingpin video. I think it was 92.
Yeah.
But it's relatively 30 years now.
Yeah.
You know, so you look at that when a lot of what is supposed to be modern music, can't do that today.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have the longevity.
So it's a gift, and I think a lot of people take it for granted, and they're still getting an audience and everything like that, but then there's others that take it for granted or have done things and they're no longer allowed to come around and be a band. Again, this time I'm not gonna name anybody because I don't want to give it any relevancy. They just troll online, talk shit about everybody doing
Yeah. Of
something.
course.
you
That's
know
that's the thing nowadays.
Talk about how bands are doing hardcore for money, and that person is a hypocrite because they're like the biggest money grip going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just jealous that they can't have the freedom to go out and do their own shows, and
Yeah.
because they've got beat on site fucking tags, or if not, also some other bands will just have bad news lingering around them because a singer or somebody did something fucked up to somebody. with the Me Too movement. A lot of people have been outed. There's predators, you know, after people, male and female, for whatever reason in music. But, that's in hip hop too, you know. So,
It's definitely
it's
come out
just,
in hardcore in the last few years. You're starting to hear more of those stories, you know.
well, and it's only fair. I mean, it's the right thing to do. There's a lot of people that take advantage of people simply because of their prestige, power, or position, and it's fucking wrong. You know what I mean? It's just plain wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been a monogamous person, so it hasn't been that many years of my life that I may have been lonely, but I've not made the mistakes that a lot of other people have done. You know.
And having this, being able to tour around the world and have, these 4 great records out and just this long history has to help, keep your head up during, your last, decade or so with just getting sick and
Oh, sure, especially, since I really started trying to do it again
yeah.
and relearn where the industry now is versus what it used to be. A lot of hard lessons, um, but that doesn't make me stop. And uh, as far as the last 2 tours to Europe are very difficult to budget, we saw them through. The one I did in 2015, we started the tour in Brussels the same exact night as the Paris attacks.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're basically 150 kilometers, less than 2 hours away from Paris. And a lot of the people involved in the cells re-entered Europe through Brussels and also had like family history. Some of them grew up, so it was a very difficult tour to be responsible for the people I had out with me,
Right.
and have that fear
Yeah.
that we may need to protect ourselves, because that whole week was crazy because there was a lot of like false threats coming
Oh,
in,
yeah, yeah, after.
even in Germany. Like we'd be in a town in the middle of Germany and be like somebody called in a bomb threat. Might be Al Qaeda, you know. And I was saying to myself, Al Qaeda, who's this guy Al, man? How is he here when he's over here? You know,
Yeah. It's got to be
fucking Al
scary, though.
Qaeda, man. If I ever meet that guy, but it was pretty scary. I remember being at the French border and all of us being pulled out with a bomb sniffing dog, which was good because both me and the guitar player had a ton of weed sitting on the fucking chair.
Right.
I'm saying to myself, I'm going to jail tonight, but,
Right.
this fucking Great Dane is going to get my weed. But they were only interested in, ammunition sniffing and bomb sniffing dogs. But, it was still a very scary situation to be in. I don't think we would have thought much of it if it wasn't for the fact that, they went into the Bataclan in Paris, which we were booked to perform at the end of the tour, mind you. You know what I mean? And now, it's fucking location of a crime scene, a terrorist crime scene, where like 30 people were shot, if not more.
Yeah.
And we did finish the tour, ironically, in a different venue that was literally 100 feet from the memorial of the Paris attacks and the cafe that they killed a bunch of people at too. So basically, the whole block was covered in flowers and tributes.
Right.
That
had to be pretty heavy.
Yeah, it was, because like I said, I had grown men that can fend for themselves.
Right.
But here I have them out on tour with me at a time of chaos. You know what I mean? And like I said, if we weren't booked to play the Bataclan and it didn't happen in one of, an alternative show venue, that these guys just walked in and just started mowing people down. It made it very real. Because as soon as we came off stage at Brussels the first night, they said shit popped off. And then in 30, and 5 minutes later, they shot up the Bataclan. It wasn't just the bombs going off at the football game. They killed people in a cafe. The Bataclan was a fucking bloodbath. And then it got real. The next day when we were in Germany, obviously we went to one of those like self-defense cop shops, and we bought, things that we could use, thinking like, if we needed to defend ourselves and try to do something. You know what I mean? I don't know if that was, just boastful thinking, but at the same time, being New York street kids at the same time, be like, yo,
That's what you're thinking, yeah.
I'm hoping, I have the sand to help defend myself or some of my people
Right.
in a moment where we, it looks like we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Only because we're over here and shit is popping off with these cells, well-armed cells, mind you. You know what I mean? What the hell else do you do?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy that far into, your musical career, having to, go through something heavy like that,
Well, again, we were there, but it wasn't us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And there is this scare of it, like I said, because it happened to somebody else, just, a couple hours away. What if we started our tour there? There wouldn't have been as many people in the venue in Paris. You know what I mean? Maybe they'd look somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's all what if. It's all a very weird gamble, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's definitely not deserved. I'm just glad that, the majority of my shows there, the drama may have spilled outside because of a couple of Nazis being at the show, and the kids, basically were kicking their ass and chasing them out, and things of that nature. You look at even like the murder of Dimebag Darrell by a schizophrenic Pantera fan.
Yeah, that was.
You look at that, and you see how a disturbed individual can just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And snuff a life out because of this like delusionment of blaming somebody for why a band broke up. Well, when I was working the clubs in the 80s and early 90s, clubs like Palladium, Tunnel, World, then Milky Way, which was at Irving Plaza for a bunch of events, because it was like a moving club. It would find locations and just establish a buzz. They shit would pop off at the end of the night outside because this was dance hall hip hop scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they couldn't bring the guns into the venue. You never had really the gun thing at hardcore shows. It's more of a physical thing. Sometimes I know people that got brained with like a brick were never the same, and eventually would fall out of the scene, or someone that gets stabbed or cut. But, there wasn't murder.
No.
Sadly, people around the fringes of the scene in New York became victims, but they didn't become victims at a venue.
Right.
At a show.
Right.
We have a serial killer, Joel Rifkin, from the 90s. He may have killed at least You know, a lot of the chicks that he was killing were on the fringes of the punk and hardcore scene. Sadly, Dave Insurgent, the singer of Reagan Youth, had a girlfriend. They were both addicted to dope. And she turned tricks and became one of Joe Rifkin's victims.
Oh wow, I didn't know
And
that.
Dave also lost his mom not too long ago during that time. And he was so brokenhearted and in such despair that he died of an overdose. I don't know if it was a suicide or not. And Dave was a very sweet guy, you know, especially towards the end. You know, I got to know him more than the persona that I saw doing these incredible sets at CB's with Reagan Youth. You know, this smart kid from NYU with these crazy dreads, you know, fronting this band and bringing all this energy and seeing the crowd respond to them. You know, I wasn't close to him so much in the beginning, and not that he was going to a lot of shows either, but he fell into the same mess that I did. And, you know, I could have been through that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, but I never had a girlfriend that went out there and tricked for herself.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Dancers.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
But it could have happened. But
yeah.
it could have happened.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. No, was dope prevalent in the hardcore scene? Is that in New York around when you were getting into it?
At the time,
Yeah.
you know, you were downtown, a lot of clubs outside of CB's that people hung out at were on the Lower East Side. And at that time, every other block had a dope spot or people trying to move and establish a spot. And it was just out there. It was a very easy trap, you know, and I got involved with it, you know, wanting to see what the big deal was all about. And, you know, it took a few years, you know, because I only did it once in a blue moon, and we're talking about like once a year, you know, that type of thing. But there came a point, you know, when I started going out there myself, you know, not being afraid to take that risk and everything else. And then it just sneaks up on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it did everyone else.
Of course.
And sadly, you know, I didn't learn from them.
Right.
And the people coming up after me didn't learn from me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was a crying shame. Nowadays, you know, you have nothing but fentanyl on the streets.
Yeah, that's scary, man.
That scares the hell out of me. You know, that scares the living shit out of me. And most people are trying to get it in pill form. You know, but like you take a country like Mexico and the way we support cartels by buying the drugs that come over the border, you know, they have fentanyl laced like morphine tablets and things like that. So people, you know, think they're buying a drug on the down low in Mexico that's the same as what we have in this country, but it's not. It's also mixed. It just looks that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could get a press set to make pills and make it look like a particular pill. Put it in a blister pack. You know what I mean? If you're organized crime and you're financed well, you know, you can get your fentanyl from China and make the batch and do this shit and not have a care in a war whether it kills somebody or not.
That's fucked, man. And going back to the new single you put out, the other song on that, "I'm Your Pusher," a pusher of hope instead of dope at this point. Like on
I'm trying to keep somebody out off the streets, so I'm trying to help them maintain their habit without them going out there and becoming a victim, like these stories I just said, because it is fucked up out there. And especially more fucked up for a woman. You have empathy for a woman. You know, you want to try to help them get help and keep them from that element as best as you can.
Yeah.
It's something that more people are going through nowadays. You know what I mean? It's not just you know, a couple and they're both addicts.
Right, right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And, it's impossible for them to get clean together because one's not ready when the other one is, and vice versa. And then that goes away. You stay in it. It's a very vicious cycle. But there's a lot of people that are in relationships now that, are going through that and are in that position where it's like, look, I'll help you stay balanced, but I don't want you out there.
And
You know what I mean?
And it's got to
So
be
now
frustrating.
now you're in the mix yourself.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Now you're putting yourself in the risk out there. And if you get busted, you'll be documented as an addict. So, it just came to me. A lot of the songs that I do, I try not to overthink the melody. I let it come through feeling. And then, from there, the lyrics just fall over. I've been pretty lucky with that with a lot of my strongest songs. May take a while to hit it, but I've been able to have a pretty decent batting average,
I think so, man. Yeah.
and I'm trying very hard to keep that level in spite of where I am right now.
Yeah, well,
You know what I mean?
I gotta say, I think you're doing a good job, man.
It's a healthy challenge too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got to be good for giving yourself hope too. Just having this art to work on and like an outlet that a lot of people don't have or don't know how to utilize. So
Yeah,
it's
and
definitely gonna help
I leave something behind
you. Yeah,
because obviously it'll last longer than I will.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
And since I am blessed with a history, and I do have a following of fans that is pretty strong, even though a lot of them don't go to shows anymore. So they rely on the music and a video and the podcasts and everything else because they don't really do the show thing anymore. But they still appreciate you and what you're doing and still listen to the music. And I use these mediums to show my appreciation for all of that. I'm not the person who felt jaded or bitter because of setbacks and everything else. I have to take responsibility for it too. I can't just sit there and blame everybody. You know what I mean? We never really had a good label to support us and get us to a level of respect that I think the band deserved. And, a lot of it just simply had to do with the musicianship. And all of us as a whole should have been in a better position than we were given. But you have to let go of that stuff because life goes on. And you just got to keep doing something that you enjoy and love.
Yeah, and you have this
And-
legacy with on this level with it's not Metallica level, but it's
It's
definitely
something.
important. Yeah,
It's something, and they're beautiful people.
Yeah.
The touring makes it worthwhile because I do get to talk to some or a lot depending, and it doesn't matter with the generation gap. We have a common ground. They don't look at me as their grandfather or their dad. You know what I mean? Which is crazy, but it's beautiful to have if you have it. And that's why a lot of people don't want to let it go. You know, because it is a big part of their lives, and for I think mainstream, they don't have what we have.
Yeah, it's like our
You know what I
little
mean?
secret,
Because they'll do the big venue and they'll meet fans,
Right.
but on a paid meet and greet.
Right. Yeah, some stupid thing
You know
like
what I mean?
that.
They're not walking around saying hello to people or going into the crowd if you're an opening band and you do your set, and after you get yourself together, you go out into the crowd, maybe go to the bar or the merch table. and you talk to people and they thank you, or whatever. They want to talk about something else, you know. Sometimes, they're not even there to talk about the music. They're there to
Yeah.
bring up an old beef or something.
Right, right.
But,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you make
Interactions.
yourself available
Yeah. Yeah.
and you show your appreciation. I learned from Bad Brains that they were the Beatles of hardcore. Let's you know what I
That's
mean?
ground zero for
But
hardcore.
but they didn't act like rock stars.
No.
You know what I mean? Like they were acceptable to their fan base. Are they older guys now and do they spend more time backstage? Yes, but you come show early enough, you could bullshit and hang with them.
Yeah. I think I heard Dr. No's birthday is today.
Is it?
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Yeah.
Mr. Gary Miller.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
You know, um, I haven't seen most of those guys in the past decade or so anyway. Being in your own life after so much, I don't go to that many shows. Um, and it is what it is. But everybody's still a part of it. The music's still there. You know, we're all on Instagram. Social media gives us
It helps,
the
yeah.
gift to be closer to people, and they get to comment and everything else. I'm very blessed. I mean, my fan base helped support me through this, through GoFundMe. And, you know, what can I say? What can I say? It's a very, very humbling experience to have, you know, in modern day terms, such friends. Not so much followers, but, friends that are willing to pitch in and help you get through a very life changing experience. And a lot of them, of course, know me just through the music or something, but they feel like they know me, and you know they worry about you. And I just want them to know that I'm not done, uh, and I still intend to do things and you know control the environment like I did before. I just don't know when it's going to be uh, uh, ready to go live again. That's something I would really like to do, but I'm figuring I'm still a good 6 months away from that.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, it's something that I'm hoping for. I want to be able to do one more run before I may not be able to do it ever again. So those things you got to take seriously. That's why singles are important, and just simply moving forward.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you, taking the time and talking to me, man. This was really cool to talk to you, and I'm sure.
Same here.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the time. Like I said, I'm always very receptive to do interviews and podcasts. It's not like I'm getting the call every week, but I appreciate your time, and I thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah, not a problem, man. And I'll let you know when it goes up.
Perfect.
Awesome. Hey, have a good night.
You too, Christian. Keep me posted,
I
and
will.
I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Eddie.
All right. Have a good night. Bye.
You too.